Hey everyone, and welcome to RUBIN'S Mind Lab, where we break down the latest research into what it really means. Have you ever felt like you finally understood something, only to realize you were fooling yourself? Today we're diving into a fascinating study that explores just that, and it has big implications for how we think about artificial intelligence and even our own understanding. Imagine you are trying to build a super smart computer program, something that can not only predict what people will do, but also explain why. Researchers call this automatic model discovery. It is like having a little assistant that watches behavior and then writes down a set of rules, a theory, to explain it all. The exciting part is that these theories are supposed to be in plain language we can understand, like a real scientific explanation. But what if the computer program gets it wrong? What if it creates a theory that looks perfectly good, predicts behavior well, but isn't the actual reason why people did what they did? That is precisely the puzzle this research tackles. So, the scientists set up a clever test. They created a game of risky choices where people had to pick between different options with certain probabilities of winning or losing money. The key thing is that the scientists knew the exact true rules the computer would use to make these choices. But they made these rules intentionally weird and complicated, not like the rules we usually think about when people make decisions. Then, they let their automatic model discovery system, which used the fancy language model, watch only the choices people made and the situations they were presented with. The system didn't know the true rules. Its job was to propose its own set of rules, its own theories that best explain the choices. Think of it like this. They had a secret recipe for a cake, but they gave their chef a bunch of cakes that looked like the final product and tasted good, but were made with different ingredients. The chef, using only taste and appearance, had to figure out the recipe. The scientists used simulated or synthetic subjects to get precise control over the true rules and the noise in the choices. They had 3 different types of these alien or weird rules, and they tested this on 60 different simulated subjects, each following one of these true rules. During the process, the automatic discovery system kept proposing new candidate models, like different theories. It would then test these theories against the data, see how well they predicted the choices, and keep the ones that did the best. This happened over and over again. And by many measures, it looked like a huge success. The system churned out over 2,400 different runnable models. And its best final models were pretty good at predicting people's choices. They could guess what people would do about 79% of the time, which is way better than random guessing or simple, obvious shortcuts. Even more impressively, the models the system came up with seemed to capture the general style of decision-making for each of the 3 secret rule families. It was like the system could tell if the simulated subject was using rule family alpha, beta, or gamma, even without being told. So, on the surface, it seemed like the system was doing a great job of discovering how these synthetic subjects were making their decisions. But here is the kicker, the big twist. Despite all this predictive power and structural understanding, none of the final 60 models actually discovered the true, underlying rule that the scientists had programmed into the simulated subjects. Not a single one. It was like the chef came up with a fantastic looking cake recipe that tasted great and looked the part, but used totally different ingredients than the original secret recipe. The scientists then did a crucial check. They went back and literally gave the system the true alien rules as options to choose from. And guess what? When the true rules were available, the system did pick them. It favored the real mechanisms over the ones it had invented on its own. This told them that the problem wasn't that the true rules were impossible to find, or that the system was bad at picking the best predictive model. The real issue was in the hypothesis generation phase. The system just wasn't coming up with the right kind of theories in the first place. It was creating models that were mathematically sound and predictively accurate, but they were built using the wrong fundamental building blocks, the wrong explanatory primitives, as the paper calls them. The discovered models tended to rely on terms that psychologists already use to describe decision-making, like expected value, probability, or risk. These are familiar concepts, but the true alien rules use completely different. Novel kinds of computations that weren't part of the system's usual toolkit when it was generating its own hypotheses. So it found a really good way to describe the behavior using familiar language, but that language didn't align with the actual causal process. This is the core warning from this research. Automatic model discovery, especially with powerful tools like AI, can trick us. It can give us something that looks exactly like a scientific theory. It is symbolic, it can be read, and it predicts data really well. But if it is not the actual mechanism that generated the data, it is essentially a false mechanism or a theory. Shaped object. This is a really important distinction. Just because a model is predictive and interpretable doesn't automatically mean it is a true explanation of reality, especially when the discovery system is working with a limited set of prior concepts or hypotheses. What does this mean for us and for AI development? Well, it highlights that we need to be cautious. Predictive success is important, but it's not the whole story. We need to figure out ways to ensure that these discovery systems are not just finding good approximations, but are actually uncovering the true underlying processes. This might involve providing them with more diverse types of information beyond just behavioral outcomes, like looking at brain activity or how people solve problems, step by step, or even designing clever experiments specifically to test proposed mechanistic hypotheses, something the researchers call interventions or process-level traces. This study is a fantastic example of how we can test the limits of these powerful AI tools in a controlled way. By creating a benchmark where the truth is known, they've revealed a subtle but critical failure mode. It reminds us that the history of science is full of people who thought they had the answer, only to find out later they were on the wrong track. And as we build more sophisticated AI, we need to be extra diligent in distinguishing between a good predictive story and the actual underlying truth. The danger is that a system might generate a plausible-sounding explanation that's just plain wrong, and because it looks so convincing, we might follow it down a dead end. So, what is my take on this? I think it is a really important wake-up call. Automatic model discovery is incredibly promising, and this study doesn't diminish that. It just shows us we need to be more sophisticated in how we evaluate the outputs. We can't just rely on predictive accuracy and interpretability alone. We need to push for a deeper understanding of the generative processes, especially when working with novel or complex systems, whether they are human minds or artificial intelligence. Future work could focus on how to inject more creativity or truly novel conceptual frameworks into the hypothesis generation process. Maybe by learning from diverse scientific domains or by explicitly penalizing models that rely too heavily on pre-existing, familiar concepts when novel ones are required. What do you all think? Have you ever experienced a moment where you thought you understood something, only to realize you had the wrong idea all along? Let me know in the comments below, and if you found this breakdown helpful, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to RUBIN'S Mind Lab for more insights into the human mind, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next exploration. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.